How's it going, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Renaissance Man. I'm your host, Rob Fishbeck, and we've got a lot of great things to get to in our show today. But first, I'd like to give a word out to our sponsors. We've got a few sponsors over here, and I'd like to give a shout out to our first sponsor of the evening, Old Paint Cans. Brought to you by Old Paint Cans for all your home workout needs during quarantine times. No need to buy any, they're already at your house. Let's go ahead and get right into our shows. So, first right off the gate, there's been some news recently about Universal and AMC theaters getting into this sort of thing that's going on. And basically, Trolls World Tour did fairly well. I don't think it would have done nearly as well had it been released theatrically. It would have probably made its money back, but I don't think it would have been nearly enough of a financial success to warrant a third film. But because it premiered on video on demand and did not go into the theaters, it ended up doing fairly well. So Universal came out and said such. And that obviously really pissed off AMC because then they came out and said, we will no longer show Universal films in our theaters. And then Regal Cinema came and basically said the same thing. To clarify, Regal Cinema said that they were not going to show movies that disrupted the normal agreement, which is 3 months in between theatrical release and video on demand. So that's something that's going on in the movie business that a lot of people don't know anything about. And my kind of answer is basically this. In a week, it's all going to get settled. The reality of it is they need Universal's money. Fast and the Furious 9 did not get pushed back an entire year to not see a theatrical release through AMC, which is one of the largest theater chains that exists. So it's kind of an old story. It's been around for about a week and a half now. And the only reason that I'm bringing it up is because I'm hoping there is a resolve within the next week. I think that's something that's probably going to end up happening. And they're just getting into this cat and mouse game, and it's just bullshit, as far as I'm concerned. But to add on top of that, recently Universal has signed a deal with Lego. So the Lego company, obviously everybody knows what Lego is. They were with Warner Brothers for the last, 7 years. And produced the Lego movie, which was a big hit. And they saw diminishing returns basically since then with the Lego Batman film, the Lego Ninjago film, and then the second Lego movie, the Lego Movie 2 is the second part or whatever. So they ended up signing a deal with with Universal recently. And I'm kind of excited about this because Warner Brothers has a lot of other things that they've got going on, whereas Universal is kind of phasing out the Fast franchise. And obviously now they're probably going to try to reboot this whole monster universe that they got going on. And then they've got their final Jurassic Park film, Jurassic World film, that will be released when all this COVID stuff is over. But Universal needs to get their hands on a great IP that they can do something with for the next 5 to 10 years. They've already got a 5-year contract with Lego. And this is a situation that I think can be very beneficial to Universal. And I'm calling it now. If this COVID stuff kind of resolves for a little bit, I would say probably by the end of 2022, if not spring of 2023, you're going to see a Lego animated film that involves all of the Universal monsters. I can almost guarantee it's going to happen sooner than later. Because that would be a movie that they could incorporate all of their classic monster universe, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, and so on and so forth, and incorporate that into some type of family-friendly Halloween fare, which we don't see a lot of. We've seen the Goosebump movies recently that, as far as I'm concerned, were very forgettable and underperformed, and then Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, but that had a PG-13 rating. So to go with a PG family-friendly film, maybe release it around Halloween time, maybe 2022, maybe 2023, because animation does take a while, and unless they've already kind of had their hands on the ball and have been proactive about getting this thing made, it'll probably be 2023 realistically. But they could always put it out during the summer. Look at those Hotel Transylvania films. They were very successful. So moving on, past that, I think it would also be interesting because you could see the Despicable Me characters pop up. And obviously the Fast and the Furious franchise, any of those characters pop up, along with the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World franchise popping up in your Lego films, would be a very interesting situation. So I'm curious to know what your guys' thoughts are on that, and I'm curious to know what's going to end up happening eventually with this whole Universal AMC debacle. And like I said, I see within the next week them probably resolving the situation just because they've got far too much to lose, and it all comes down to money anyways. It's the same thing with what happened to Marvel and Sony over the summer with the whole Spider-Man debate. Eventually everybody cooled off, went into their corners, they came back, they renegotiated the contract, and now Marvel's got Spider-Man for 2 more movies, right? So, anyways, moving on past that, another big story this week in movie news is Taika Waititi has signed on to direct a Star Wars movie. Now, hold on a second. Most people are very excited about this, and I'm not saying I'm not. I think I'm a little more uneasy about the situation than probably anybody else. Basically, my theory is this. After I walked out of the premiere of Rise of Skywalker, I was like, I'm done. I don't need any more Star Wars movies. I've got The Mandalorian. Had The Mandalorian not come out prior to Episode 9, I think you would have seen even more of a divisiveness in the fandom. It's been a toxic fandom for multiple years now, and I think it would have gotten far worse. I think what made it better, the relief, for even for like myself, who's kind of your middle-of-the-road Star Wars fan, was that we have The Mandalorian. We have something that is canon, that is shot well, that has a great arc in story, and the characters are real, and it feels like Star Wars. So the conclusion I came to was this. If they're going to make another Star Wars movie, they need to make it like the original trilogy. Why does The Mandalorian work so well? Because it's got a very similar tone to the original trilogy. Why did the prequels go off and do their own thing? Because they weren't like the original trilogy. And then the newest trilogy, why did that not necessarily work? Well, you had a totally different tone. Solo and Rogue One I'm going to toss to the side for now. We'll get back to those movies at some other time. But for Taika Waititi, he's got a very distinct style of humor. And whether it's Jojo Rabbit or Thor Ragnarok or What We Do in the Shadows or whatever it is, he's got a very distinct style. And there's nothing wrong with that. And his work with The Mandalorian was great. But signing him on to do a new Star Wars feature that would more than likely turn into a trilogy purely for the fact that he's going to do this last Thor film, and then he doesn't have really any other big budget projects in the works. This would probably be a situation, now that he's an Oscar winner, he's one of the biggest names in Hollywood. They probably wouldn't just want him to do one. Even if he didn't direct the other two, he would probably have his hands in a trilogy. Because at the end of the day, until Star Wars Lucasfilm gets rid of Kathleen Kennedy, we're going to constantly be in this disaster of a mess. So with Taika, I think he's a great director. I think he's a great actor. I think he's a great writer. I think he's phenomenal. But I don't think he's a right fit for Star Wars, at least not right now. So hear me out real quick. Right now, we need to get somebody. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are in the television side of things, and I'm really excited to see what's going to end up happening with Obi-Wan and Cassian Andor, like all the other stuff that they've got in the works over on the Disney Plus side of things. Right now, Star Wars, if they're going to do a film, they need to get almost an unknown. They need to get somebody who did a really great indie short or did a short film, is green in the eyes, and is ready to buckle down and really hone a Star Wars property that's new. I think that's what would work best. To bring in a big name like Taika Waititi and let him run amok and do what he wants, I think that's fine. But I think you're not solving your divisiveness issue that you're having in the fandom. Why did people become Star Wars fans in the first place? The original trilogy. That's the only answer to the entire situation. It's the original trilogy. There are very few amount of people that saw the prequels and then went back and watched the original trilogy and still liked the prequels better. or the new trilogy. That's what unites everybody. It's that tone. It's the original trilogy. It's not necessarily just the characters. Why does The Mandalorian work? It crosses over. It keeps a lot of that tone. It keeps a lot of that vibe that's going on, and it crosses over into The Mandalorian. So to make a Star Wars film that is similar in tone that way, I think is the only way you're going to get the fans back. Rise of Skywalker should have made far more money than it did. But the reason that it didn't was because of a million reasons that at the end of the day boils down to they did not know what they were doing. They didn't have a plan in place for a trilogy. They had Colin Trevorrow, then they get rid of him, then they bring J.J. Abrams back, then they CGI, Leia, Carrie Fisher into these scenes, and they used all these old recut things from Force Awakens in Episode 9, and it just didn't work. It was a complete mess. Did it make money? Absolutely. But it left a bad taste in most people's mouths that was already there from The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. I think you can bring Taika on, but bring him on after you reestablish the film canon, the film situation, that whole thing. Come back strong with... I was curious to see what Benioff and Weiss were going to do. I'd be curious to see what the Russo brothers would do. Make it far more serious and go that route, and then bring Taika in to do like one of the spin-off films, like Solo and Rogue One. Rogue One was a great movie. It's very underrated. Anyways, those are my thoughts on Taika Waititi taking over and doing a Star Wars movie. I'm hesitant. I'm not against it. I'm hesitant. And I think they need to wait. I think they need to wait until they can reestablish the fandom and reunite everybody. And you're not doing it with the television side of things because there's not that communal enjoyment that you get from going to a movie premiere opening night. You get that at the movies. You get it at home and on social media, but it's just not as much. It's doled out a little bit. So anyways, moving on. Steve Carell has a new show coming out at the end of the month on Netflix called Space Force. I'm very interested to see this movie on so many levels. The first probably being, it's his return to television. So is it going to live up to, Michael Scott in The Office? Or is it going to be something that's so different that you can't compare the two, which would probably be the best route to go? Or is it going to end up somewhere in the middle, which is probably where it's going to end up, is somewhere in the middle. And I'm excited about it because it's a newer issue, this whole Space Force thing. And obviously with the government coming out and talking about the UFOs and all that kind of stuff, it is on our minds. And we kind of are living somewhat in the future right now, especially with everything that's going on with COVID. So there's another, interesting aspect of the whole thing. But I think everybody's going to sit down and watch this movie. TV show, my bad. Don't go into this thinking you're going to get The Office right out of the gate. Because if you go back and rewatch season 1 of The Office, which I've done more recently, it's great. And the characters are there and the jokes are there and everything. But it pales in comparison to season 2 or season 3. And I think the expectation, the bar is going to be so high because it's Steve Carell's return to television. It's a comedy. Everybody knows The Office is going to be taken off of Netflix at the end of the year. And, just everybody relax if you didn't know this already. Parks and Rec is leaving in October. And The Office, I believe, is leaving somewhere in December. They're going to be moving over to the Peacock Network, the Peacock whatever app, whatever the hell you want to call it, which is just NBC. It's their streaming app. I think that's going to be interesting. But as a side note, I got to talk about Elon Musk for a second because he takes the cake this week. I'll never forget when Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin named their child Apple. I thought this was just the strangest thing in the whole world. I was like, who names their kid that? And then Elon Musk has a child. Apparently he has 7 children. Did not know this. And I'm going to see if I can get this right. It's X, and then it's like this like weird triangle thing with an E, A-12. He takes the cake for the strangest celebrity baby name I've ever heard in my entire life. And it just got released a couple hours ago that a California official said you cannot officially name your child that. So, tip of the hat to that guy or girl, because hopefully somebody can talk some sense into this guy. And the fact that he's got 7 children just kind of puts the final nail in the coffin that we don't need to produce any more kids, because if they got Elon Musk's blood, they're going to go on to create great things and make the rest of us look like idiots. So that's my side note on Elon Musk. But anyways, so before I wrap things up here, I don't like to make these videos too long. Any of you that have watched this, how's it going? Hope everybody's doing well at home. We're all just kind of getting by here. I did want to make an announcement. So I launched the Rob Fishbeck Network a couple weeks ago. It was basically just my old music channel, and I was like, well, I'd like to expand on this and not just have my music stuff, but kind of venture out and do some of my movie reviews that I thoroughly enjoy doing, and a whole bunch of other things. So within that, I'd kind of been tossing this idea around for quite a while. It started almost as a joke, and then kind of turned into, well, we could just make this a series. Like, it wouldn't be incredibly difficult. So, I don't know, for many years, I've seen these home remodeling shows, these home makeover shows, and I always just kind of shrug and shake my head at it because, one, it's like everybody on the planet watches the Gangs, Chip and Joanna, and now everybody's house looks just like their house. So there's really no originality to it, and it's definitely something that bothers me. But the thing that really bothers me about those shows is that they'll walk into a room and go, oh man, we got mold behind these cabinets. We got to rip out all the cabinets. And then it cuts. And then they walk back into the house and they're like, well, now that the cabinets are in, let's move on to the carpet. And it's like, I don't want to watch that. I want to watch them. I want to see how they rip everything down. I want to see how they do the work. I think that would be far more interesting. So I was just kind of sitting around one day and I thought, well, what if we did a parody and just kind of parodied the fact that they don't ever really do anything on these shows. They just kind of walk around and they roll the cameras and they take their sledgehammer and they hit the wall a couple times. They're like, oh man, I'm so tired. Oh, I've been banging on this wall all day. And it's like, why does your hair look perfect and you're not dirty? So it's like, right? So I came up with this idea for Rob the Renovator, which is basically just me doing a thick Chicago accent and being a bumbling moron. I wouldn't say I'm the most handy person in the world, but I know the difference between a screwdriver and a hammer, and I can get some things done. So I was like, well, why don't we just turn this into a monthly series and just kind of parody this whole home renovation, home makeover type of show. So on Friday, I'm going to be releasing the first episode of Rob the Renovator. These are going to be probably just once a month. We cut a lot of promos for it. So if you go over onto my Instagram page, I'll try and share them on here as well. We cut a lot of promos that kind of lead up to the episode. And then it'll probably just be a once a month thing. They're like 10 to 15 minute episodes. So head on over to, you can just search me on YouTube, Rob Fishbeck. And head on over to the Rob Fishbeck Network and go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't, gotten a chance to check it out yet. And on Friday, we will be dropping the first episode of Rob the Renovator. I'm really excited about it. My buddy Max, shout out to Max Williams, could not have done this without him. He edited the whole thing, shot the whole thing, and had a lot of input on kind of the flow of the show. We kind of sat and, wrote some scripts, tested some scripts out, and was like, I'd rather just wing it, just improv it. And so that's what you're going to get. So it could totally be terrible and I'll fall flat on my face. Maybe that's what happens, but maybe it's good. I've seen it and I've got some thoughts on it. So I'm really pleased to announce and excited to announce that the first episode of Rob the Renovator will be coming out this Friday. Make sure you go over on my Instagram page at Rob Fishbeck Music, and you can check out all the promos there. And we did make an account for Rob the Renovator, so you can start following at Rob Renovator or Rob the Renovator. Yeah, Rob the Renovator. That's my email. At Rob the Renovator over on Instagram. And check it out. Give it a follow and check out the promos, and we'll kind of go from there. So I'm going to wrap everything up, but as a side note before I end this thing, has everybody been watching The Last Dance? It is phenomenal. I've talked about this before on this show, but I can't talk about it enough. Dennis Rodman, after this past week, I'm like straight up, Dennis Rodman is my spirit animal. He is what most of us would be. And I'm going to steal a line from my buddy Jimmy. We were talking earlier. He said this, so I'm going to steal this from him. He goes, he is who most of us would be if we all of a sudden just made a crap load of money. And I don't disagree. Dennis Rodman is that guy. He's a very interesting fella, and I really like The Last Dance. I think it's a great documentary. And I'm really excited because the 2 episodes that are going to be coming out this week, episodes 7 and 8, were kind of caught up to right when Jordan left the first go-around. And then he, went and played baseball for 18 months, and then he came back, and then they won 3 more championships in a row. So I hope everybody's been watching it, especially if you're from my neck of the woods over here in Chicago. It's just the coolest thing. I'm so glad that they made this documentary on Michael Jordan and the Bulls, themselves. So anyways, I'm going to get out of here, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And if you're watching this live, as soon as this is over, you can go back and watch the replay. Got all kinds of terrible jokes and movie news for you. And don't forget to check out Rob the Renovator. It premieres on Friday over on my YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm really excited about it. And anyways, so that's all for now. Hope everybody's staying safe out there, and we'll see you guys soon. So take it easy.